So I always think it's interesting how in the Western tradition of gaming, uh, slimes are shit fucking terrifying.
Right.
Like they
They were
they're
talking about this on Tuesday.
like they will gobble up your weapons.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna be turned to a little pile of goop.
Mm-hmm.
They're genuinely terrifying. And then
They're like little acid balls of death.
in the JRPG tradition, they're just like little mooks. You're just like, oh,
Yeah.
oh, I killed one. Oh, it's
They're
dead.
like the goblin
Yeah,
of
right. And I did a modicum of research on this, and it's
Mhm.
really just because of like tradition, right?
Yeah.
In one game, in one place they started like this, and I don't know if the slimes or in the oozes in like D&D were inspired by something else. Honestly, they
Mhm.
probably were, but
I don't know where it
yeah.
came from.
Yeah, but I think that, well, I was reading one thing. I was talking about like like in science fiction, like some like Lovecraft stuff, like maybe like a
Mhm.
Shoggoth was like the original ooze. But
Mhm.
I just always find that interesting, and it's something that like I remember like when I didn't know a whole lot about JRPGs,
Mhm.
like I was kind of confused of like, this is obviously a trope. Like I am supposed to react to this as if I know this is supposed to be a like a mook, but
Mhm.
it's something where like you're playing like cheap flash games as a kid, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, there's a little slime there, right?
And then you
you're,
hit it, and then it splits into
yeah,
two slimes.
and you're kind of like, why is it this thing? Like, this is kind of dumb. Like, why would you choose this thing? And then later you get like, oh, this is like a genre trope. Now I see why that's there. And like,
I wonder if that's because those are easier to animate.
Yeah,
Could be a reason.
maybe, yeah. The one thing, I saw like a little article, and it was like, oh, well, if you have like slimes, it's like you can theme them in like elemental ways because they're like just like a amorphous blob, and
Yeah.
it's really easy for you just like, oh, there's just a big one, and now it's the boss one, and it's
Right.
scary, right? So it's probably, yeah, there probably is a lot of like limitations of the systems and technology that they had, so they're like, okay, well, we're just doing this now.
Yeah, like it's a lot easier to draw a blue circle or a green square than it is to draw like a whole character.
Yeah,
especially like hitboxes and stuff.
I would maybe I'm biased, but I definitely think that the like D&D oozes are way cooler.
Oh yeah, I think so too.
Mostly because they're terrifying.
Yeah. No, you like, especially like a gelatinous cube. It's like you may not see it coming because it's transparent. And then all of a sudden you are in this thing and you are being like dissolved to death.
And even
which is
like
so cool.
And even so, like the gelatinous cube is like supposed to be a joke, right? Like it was like supposed to be like a meme that, I don't know if it was Gary Gygax, but like someone, someone who like made a dungeon and put the first gelatinous cube in it is like, this is ridiculous. This is absurd. It's like it's a slime that's been shaped by the walls and stuff around it. This is obviously silly. But now we're like, this is this is great.
Yeah.
We're really into it.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of the oozes, especially when you really want to fuck up a player's armor. You throw it was like a gray ooze or a black ooze at them or something like that. Yeah, and then like you hit it with something, and then it like trashes their non-magical weapons, and I just think that's wild. Which brings us to the topic of the day today, slimes and oozes. So, welcome to the Lore Foundry. This is your friendly neighborhood world building for tabletop role playing games.
We're so responsible.
Yeah, super responsible.
I'm Greg.
I'm Daron.
Wow.
And we release episodes irregularly.
Well, let's just say twice a month.
A month.
Yep. Maybe at the same time.
Yes. A lot of times it's a double drop on the 30th because I've got 8 hours to make sure that my space allotment isn't reset. In any case, so I wanted to talk about like slimes and oozes because I listened to a podcast episode of Stuff You Should Know that was about slime molds.
Yep.
And it was super cool, and I really liked it. They went into like some of like the ecological things about it and kind of expanded on like how oozes are used. oozes, sorry, slime mold is used in other ways. And so the first thing that I thought was really interesting is that like so in a slime mold itself, right, which is I think kind of where you should start if you really wanted to make sure that your slimes and things in your role-playing setting kind of like made sense. I guess like there's an ecological niche for slime molds, which I think is important to like know so that you can kind of like, pull it, stretch it, whatever to fit your setting.
Have a place that you're starting from to know like what.
Right. So in nature, like slime molds are a thing. They can get up to like a foot wide, kind of like the size of a medium pizza. And like they can be
that description,
right.
The size of a medium pizza.
Can you just imagine like a little pepperoni pizza, but it's like flipped up, so it's like an upside down pepperoni pizza that's just kind of like sitting there. Like like that dude's just he's moving. Colored. He's like yellow on the ground, and he's just moving like an inch every like 5 hours, just like searching for some like bacteria to eat, because that's the ecological niche, is they will eat the like decomposing bacteria and stuff like that. So something dies, begins to decompose, and this thing's just like kind of meandering, finds it, engulfs it, consumes, and then there's another animal or whatever that will come and eat the ooze. I'm just gonna call him ooze, slime mold, but I'm gonna call him ooze. It's an ooze.
Ooze.
And so sometimes it's like a beetle or whatever, but basically it's kind of the connecting point between the decomposers and like the rest of the trophic hierarchy. And for a while people thought that they were like molds, right? Like a fungus. And then they figured out that it's actually like a really, really old archaic form of life. There's a real fancy word for it, but I don't know what it is.
Was it like protozoa?
No, it's not protozoa.
It wasn't protozoa.
Let me look it up really quick. Slime molds are a eukaryotic organism that are sometimes like multicellular, whatever, like most life, but sometimes can also be like one big blob of a cell.
This is one of those like things that like stretch the definition of a multicellular, like the difference between single cell and
it's got like all the stuff of like hundreds, millions of cells, whatever. It's just all within one big cell membrane. In any case, it's in the Protista kingdom. So it's like a really early basic form of life, as far as I can tell. In any case, that part's really not that important. But basically,
Protista, that's like Batista's successor.
No, his predecessor.
His predecessor.
Right.
The
it's
pre-Tista.
Actually, the pre-Tista. Guardians of the Galaxy. The prologue featuring Dave Protista. But yeah, so these things just kind of like meander on the ground. They move by kind of just like, stretching, like they pull their goop in from the one side and push it out to the other side.
Yeah, there's time-lapse footage you can find of them moving around, and you're like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah,
and it's also like, really creepy.
Yeah, it's kind of reminds me of a little bit like Symbiote in Venom. A little bit,
but there's usually like a wave kind of going across
right
if I recall, and
yeah, so they're cool looking. And so when I was thinking about like oozes in D&D, like basically you want to hit a couple of like the main points. One, like there is a reason that they exist, like ecologically. Like a lot of monsters in D&D, I think they just like exist, right? And then their ecological niche isn't really explained, or like they don't seem to really like fit in their environment, which I think is really annoying because it doesn't feel like a cohesive world. And so in Dungeons and Dragons, maybe oozes just kind of like exist, and like they're large because there's a lot of like dead stuff in there maybe, and they will kind of consume the bones of the dead, not maybe to kill the things itself, but they will eat the bacteria on top, and then the rest of it happens to dissolve too. Another interesting thing about slime molds is that like they're like weirdly intelligent, right? Like you drop one into a petri dish with a maze with like a little oat flake or whatever, some food on the other side, like it will find the quickest way there, even if there's like multiple paths, right? And there's a lot of different like cool experiments that I'll get into a little bit later, that researchers have done But it's like weird. So they're intelligent. They eat decomposers, and they also proliferate by turning themselves into spores, right? So like if they're they reach the end of their life, or they for whatever reason have decided to proliferate, they just sit, they dry up, poof, away they go into spores, and then little itty bitty bits pop up later.
I don't know if this is the case with slime molds, but I know that often it's times of stress on an animal, or
right.
like on a being of some kind will encourage it to do like its spawning kind of thing. So it's something where it's like, oh, I may not be living much longer here, so I'm gonna reproduce and then spread spores to the wind or whatever. So I might find another place.
Yeah, there's a one example that they talked about in the Stuff You Should Know podcast is that like if it's like really hot, really rainy, you might find a slime mold making its way onto your lawn, and like it's fine, it's not going to kill anybody. But yeah, then it will slowly like dry up, go poof, and away it goes. And it just found a stimuli or a stimulus that made it do that. In any case, so it does that. And also, here's a really cool, interesting thing that I found is that if a slime mold encounters a bacteria that could like infect like the rest of the slime mold, like a part of the slime mold will basically like will
butt off.
Will butt off, kind of like jump on the grenade, so to speak. And so going into D&D, I was thinking that like, yeah, if an ooze is in a dungeon and there are like people in the dungeon, like maybe it doesn't necessarily want to kill people all the time, but it understands that like this thing may threaten me, so I better, take it out real quick, even if it means that I die.
I really like, I think that I really like using oozes more like as traps, which you see some with like some like funguses and stuff like that, where it's not something you're going to go and fight with like a sword or whatever, but it's something where like, okay, we got to be careful. We have to like make sure we're safe. We have to have the right protective equipment. And that's like one way that I like to imagine using oozes in like in a more like grounded way. Or yeah, in this, like, let's say you've got like your rotting dragon in the, in your dungeon with a big ooze on top of it, and like you guys show up and then it sends a couple of them at you to deal with it, and then maybe it sends a couple more and maybe whatever whatever being it is, there's so much ooze in there that you don't want to deal with it, so maybe that would be maybe you sit around and you kill every single ooze, or maybe it's something where like it's something to put time pressure on you, where it's like, oh, I have to go, right? And every time you like interact with the ooze, then it sends out more at you, so you have to be careful about it. It's maybe an idea,
right? And that's another point, like the splitting thing. Like oozes will or slime molds will split themselves apart, like I was saying, to kind of like fall in the grenade, so to speak. But if they really need to get some food and need help getting food, like they will bundle together and just form one big blob, but still like be separate. Like their cell walls don't go away, right? Like they're still separate within it. And then when they finally find food, they're like, all right, peace out, away I go.
Yeah.
Additionally, and this is part of that like, kind of like weird intelligence thing, and they don't have any brains, nothing, right? They can learn from each other, and they can, learn in general, right? They're not completely like dumb, monotonous automatons of nature, right? Like if they find something that seems like it might be bad, but actually isn't bad, they'll like, test it. Okay, hey, this thing's fine, whatever, we'll go. And then the next one comes up, finds it, learns the same lesson. But if one of those teaches the lesson first,
from like touching it,
from like touching it or like incorporating like a little ball part of it, the new ooze will just know, right? So slime A or ooze A, slime mold A will learn the lesson, and part of it goes into slime mold B. Slime mold B no longer has to learn the lesson; it will just do it. Additionally, if you separate them, sometimes they'll forget, but if they're left together long enough, that like knowledge, I guess, will be like incorporated into all of Slime Mold B. And then when you take away the part of A that was in there, the Slime Mold B will still know that, which I just think is wild.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, there's something to be said for like the mystical way that like memories are actually implanted with people. Whatever. So I just think that's really neat. Right. And so, like, just given all those things, you kind of can flavor the way that you use slimes and oozes like in a game. And then here is the thing that really kind of turned it up to 10 for me, where I really started to think about different cool and interesting ways to use oozes in D&D, was they were able to use an ooze to like they put it in a petri dish and like put different oat flakes down in this roughly created like map, geography, whatever, of like ancient Rome, and put like cities and all these different represented by like oat flakes. And these slime molds would extend out and like trace paths that are like old ancient Roman paths, right? Or like current ones that are known, things that have been forgotten, that kind of thing. And I just think that part to me was super cool. So I was thinking,
you're defining from the slime mold.
Exact. That's what I'm saying. Right? Like, can you imagine like cult of the slime mold or cult of the ooze, right? And so instead of like tossing like sheep bones or dragon knuckle bones or like looking at the sky, like these people like have these cultures of oozes that like that they keep fed or whatever, and then they probably are also like big into cartography and things like that, and they will like try to predict futures or predict or like observe pasts based on these like oozes, which I just think is so freaking neat.
Yeah, that would be a really
right?
like, a really like weird, very like like psychedelic experience kind of thing that you'd have when you're like seeing them like stare at like some kind of fluorescent orange mold in like a little dish, and it's like, well, what's it doing? And you're like, what is the person doing?
Yeah, and like the process of divining would take so incredibly long because they wouldn't move that fast. And so that was one thing that I was thinking, like what would a cult of the ooze look like? And I was thinking, like, I mean, it's probably underground, I imagine, or like maybe if they're really well like thought of, they might have like this big old church or something like that. But they probably
like,
got
like their sanctuary is going to be chthonic, like they're like they're gonna like, you know, maybe it's not like they're literally like in a cave, but if they're in like an urban area, like they're gonna have like a basement dug into the ground, like part of it is having like that kind of cool damp place.
And I wonder if it would almost be like a zoo kind of a situation where it's like, yeah, you've got just this ooze kind of in its like, own like little environment. And then, because if you're revering these oozes, right, like you're not just going to keep them in a cage.
You're revering the ooze itself. It's not a tool.
I think a little bit of both. I think it's definitely like the tool, but it's like the ooze knows, and so you like this knowledge is a gift from the ooze, and like the ooze being a relatively amorphous, seemingly unintelligent thing, like I think the cult would think that there's like an ancient basic like element of the universe that exists within oozes, and like oozes are untainted by like the complexity of life or whatever. And so they need to be, I don't know, like cherished or put up on a pedestal in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, I definitely think that there'd be like a glorified like zoo pen for it. And like offerings to them.
You can go ooze hunting.
Dude. Yes. I'm here for it.
You can find the special ooze that's only on this side of the mountain. Like bring it back to our temple. Like, yeah.
That, I think it'd be really interesting, like as a character. Like if you were an ooze cleric, like your life's journey would be to like go out and try to find new oozes to, I don't know, maybe you divine different stuff with it. I don't know. So the other thing is that like in D&D, at least classic, there is a demon prince or demon lord called Jubilex, right? And that's like basically the patron demon of oozes. And I was trying to think, I'm like, okay, so oozes in D&D sometimes are endowed with like a sentience to them, like an actual like or like maliciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most of that can probably be explained away by that like altruistic want to like contain the bad and then just like kind of fall on the sword. But I definitely think that maybe some of these cultists might actually be like tainted by
the ooze.
like weaponizing the oozes or like Jubilex or whatever your analog is in your setting is like this primordial like the very first organism to ever be, but it's got like this massive like hive mind consciousness that like suffuses all of these oozes, and like each ooze is just a different replicating pattern that comes from like the base of Jubilex. And I don't know if that's actual D&D canon, but I think it's kind of a cool jumping off point for, I don't know, trying to maybe explore like different like different cults and things where it's like you might have like some divination cults with these oozes, but like others that are like the world will be ooze. This is the way that it is. And I like the kind of people where it's like I am the harbinger of the end, and then I will be consumed by the ooze later in life. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, that
like a death cult.
Yeah, well, that would be pretty fun. Actually, I that like makes sense. Like if you want to have that sinister side to them, where they're like, we are going to either find or release or manufacture or summon, this particular thing, and then it's something that's probably very small, and then you have it just be like a horror movie, right? Where it's like growing and it's getting larger, and then it's to the point where like it's a little like bump, like it's the size of a house, and then like you look back the next day and you're like, oh, it's the size of a neighborhood. Oh no. Yeah, that would be fun.
I think I'm struggling to find a way to like make this like a really powerful like hook where it's like, oh, like a big oopsie ooze adventure.
Well, okay, so it could be that it's something that like it's a thing that demands respect. So
right.
It's maybe this ooze cult is not malicious, but it's something where like, yeah, we have like some stuff that's actually pretty dangerous here, right? That like like this is something that like is the most important. Like it portends life and death, like it will tell you like the fate of wars and famines and things like that. Also, don't let it out of the jar, or
right.
it will grow and grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, it will consume everything.
So it could be like, oh, we made a mistake, and now we need we need ooze busters to come in.
Oh my gosh,
like
it's amazing.
Like are we gonna like burn down the town because like the
right.
the inferno will destroy the thing inside of it,
and then like if
or lure into the woods that we're gonna burn down, or like will salt water kill it, so we have to like
right. Or like maybe I'm trying to think if I would want to like be like, these are the oozes that like are spawn of Jubilex, or these are the oozes that are not like touched by his like presence or something like that. Or maybe all of them are.
Maybe there was one ooze touched by Jubilex, and then every ooze that ooze touched after that then became touched by Jubilex. And so it's very important to find untainted oozes, right?
Do you think you could
with that like
you
that
think
knowledge?
You could exercise an ooze? Where it's like you just have this like jar of like jiggly matter, and you're just over here like throwing holy water on it.
Or maybe you need like demon essence in order to test like something. Like you want to make sure that your demon detector is working, or something like that, right? And then the go-to way to do that is you have a tainted ooze, and you just have a little bit of it. It's safe, it's in the jar, right? But then you're like, okay, does my does my sting glow when demonic things are near?
Right.
Okay, it's something like you have like the it'd be similar to how you can have like a Geiger counter, and you're like, hey, this cup is really radioactive and things like that, where it's like it
exhibits a behavior.
Yeah, there are just man-made objects that happen to be radioactive, but not in a dangerous way.
Right.
And then this is the kind of closest thing you have to that, where it's like, okay, we need our demon detector, and so we need a safe amount of demon. How do we do that? Oh, okay, I guess it's a little bit of ooze.
Right. And then you use your container of cannot be dissolved or whatever.
Yeah.
And you would have to have a magical container or like an adamantium thing or something like that.
Like you have it sealed in like an ampule. So like
what's that?
It's like a glass vial that has been melted shut.
Oh yeah.
That would be a good way to do it. So it is kind of like difficult to like get more like it's like a difficult and like kind of dangerous process to get to like release the ooze, make more of it, put in more ampules to like multiply it. But when it's in the ampule, it should be pretty safe, like you hope, like don't fall on it, right?
Yeah,
be careful.
it's like make sure. I mean, you could make it kind of like a Prince Rupert's drop or whatever that can like withstand freaking like bullets because of the way that like the glass condenses or whatever, makes it incredibly strong. Unless you hit it in this very certain kind of way and the whole thing just goes nuts. Yeah, I think having oozes be used as tools, like by maybe not the cult of the ooze. I think the cult of the ooze would be like, those would be the icky bad guys, but like the ooze diviners or whatever, like that would be sick as hell.
Yeah.
And I think too, so there's been some like real life research where they like people were able to write algorithms that kind of like modeled how oozes like move and whatever, and they took that algorithm and put it into like a model of the like nearby universe, right, and try to see kind of like how if things were connected or whatever, and they were able to map out kind of these like different filaments between galaxies. And so I think maybe this like divining ooze organization, maybe they use that for that kind of a thing too, like planar gates and whatnot. Like you'd have to, like, it's real like high fantasy stuff.
If you're doing like a Spelljammer thing, then that would be a way to like, tell, or you've got the little ooze and you're like, ooze, tell me where I should go. Like, where is the thing? Like that, that would be sufficiently wacky where you've got like your navigator is staring at like a little blob that's like blah, 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 moving around inside of like a crystal ball, and you're like, tell me where to go.
Right. And then like the direction that it like moves towards is the direction that like you think you have to go.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that'd be super neat. But yeah, so those are kind of like my initial thoughts on it. I was just like, man, oozes, like, to me in D&D, they just like, they're a thing that exist. That's kind of just like, yeah, you spring one of these on your players in a dungeon and it's gonna mess them up, but there's not a whole lot more to them. And so I really just wanted to explore some of the like deeper ecological things about them. But overall, like, unfortunately, I do think that oozes are kind of like they're certainly not one dimensional, and we've thought of a couple different ways to like jazz them up, but like, I don't know.
I really like the idea of them being tools. I think that would be really fun.
I think the demon detectors and like tools to like think of like how to build roads and like where roads might be.
Yeah.
Is really neat.
Yeah, and then I think and then outside of that, really, I think the advice is like more general, like dungeon design advice, where I think oozes can be really fun and feel very sensible and grounded, using them as hazards or traps.
Yep.
Where it's like, like touching one isn't going to kill you, but it's going to like give you a nasty welt or a disease or something like that. And there's too many of them for you to just like, like burn them all or destroy them all. Like you have to go figure out how you're going to get through this space, like that kind of thing.
Like it's a containment scenario instead of a combat scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like containment, or like a hazmat scenario where you're like, how do you like keep yourself from being exposed to something like that? And yeah, I think it would also be fun to, you come across like an ooze devouring something like, some massive thing in a dungeon, and then you're like, oh wait, I need a sample. Look, just let me get a sample.
Right,
and then it's like, no, you stupid wizard. No, you're
like,
not.
You're gonna cause us all to die.
Yeah. That would be a good like way to get someone to bite, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're like, yeah, there's a pile of treasure under it, and everyone's like, okay, we can get more treasure, but then the wizard's like, but the ooze
But
itself.
the ooze, I need it. You know, like no. It's not the treasure under the ooze. The ooze is the treasure. Yeah. So I think if you're able to use them as kind of these different tools and stuff, there's a lot more ways that you can, kind of incorporate them into. I don't know, like you can make them quest items or like animal parts, I guess, where it's like I need the fang of a dragon, or I need, 2 vials of gelatinous cube ooze.
Oh,
something
so
like that.
yeah, maybe you have a situation where
And like maybe not spell components, but like potion components too.
Yeah, maybe you have like you have something that really is just like dangerous, like it is like melt your flesh kind of instantly sort of thing. And so you're like, oh, you go into the adventure knowing that you can't just straight up like fight it, blast and stuff like that. So you have to like get the ooze to like fall into like a pit, and then you take a sample of the ooze or something like that. Like that may be something to do. That may be a way to make it like more interesting than just like all right, we just cast burning hands on it until it's dead.
The other thing that I was thinking, at least like ecologically, like that whole deal, I definitely feel like oozes in D&D, like they kind of take both parts of the ecological niche that I was talking about earlier. Like they're the ones generally that eat the decomposers, but I think in D&D usually they are the decomposer as well.
Yeah.
So it'd be neat if, I think, maybe they found like a not demonic ooze that like didn't kill them, but like you could have oozes that like
healy ooze.
Yeah, it could like heal you, or like if you had an infection or whatever, it's like, yeah, let's go get this ooze, toss it on there. It'll like, we don't know why, maybe because you don't have germ theory in your D&D campaign. But it'd be like putting maggots or whatever on wounds, right? But this time it's just an ooze. And so like they wouldn't necessarily have to be decomposers, but maybe it's just the evil ones are decomposers. I don't know.
You have to find the magic Isu. It will heal your wounds.
The magic what?
Isu.
What the hell is an Isu?
ESOO.
Oh my god. It's just ooze backwards. I'm upset right now. I saw you like laughing to yourself when you thought of this, and I'm like, what the hell, David? Thinking of Isu. Oh, sweet lord.
That would be neat though. It would be a good way to like flavor like a different kind of healer and like make your players feel very uncomfortable while they're just like putting like this goopy stuff on them. Oh wait, no, that's moving. Like it's moved around and you're like, oh, why
this is my pet Ooze. He helps me heal people. Yeah, I think that'd be really cool. Like, you can take you can just take what we know about it and just like flip it on its head. Maybe it's like a divine ooze that you had blessed or something, and that's why it can do all these different things. And maybe like the thing that it eats is actually like negative energy or something like that. And so, like all it leaves behind is like the opposite of that, like positive, like healing energy. Maybe you could use it to like eat curses and stuff like that. Like maybe it's kind of like that radioactive fungus kind of a thing, only an ooze, right? Because fungus and ooze are different things, or fungus and slime molds at least are different things. So yeah, there's a lot of different, I think, ways that you could take it. And yeah, it's just like so wide. Like some oozes in D&D, like they'll like eat your equipment, right? And it's like, yeah, well, what else could they possibly eat? Like some of them eat stone. Some of them, I mean, you could have like a naturally occurring like a forest, like a wood eating ooze. Maybe that's like a part of a save the forest campaign or something like that.
You could have an interesting encounter where you have an ooze that only damages equipment. That's the only thing it does. It only like does metal or something like that. So you have like a okay, we have to do this one area of the dungeon with no metal, right? Because we have to wade through it or whatever. That would be a pretty fun. You
have to like throw all your equipment up on the like flying carpet or whatever. Using them as hazards would be fucking baller, especially if you had some that like ate magical energy or something, and then maybe the point was like maybe you needed to increase the size of this ooze, so you just kept chucking like fireballs at it, and it's like you'll absorb, and then finally when it gets like big enough, it plugs a hole or something, and then a door opens or something like that. So yeah, I mean you can dress up what they eat, how they eat it, all that good stuff. That's all I got.
Yeah,
I think I thought that I was gonna have a lot more to say on this, but I was just really excited about it, and then I started like. I just fucking word vomited the entire first half of the episode. Now I'm kind of out of ideas.
No, that's fine.
So if you, dear listener,
yeah,
have any ideas on how you could use oozes in your campaign,
or molds, but they're different,
or molds. I mean, I think also fungus would be a fun one to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you're gonna use them as like divining tools, which I think that's gonna be what I do. Where it's like we need to discover the secrets of the ancient past. Quick, go get the ooze. Or maybe you want to use them just as dungeon hazards, or you want to have ooze cultists that want to turn the whole world into ooze. Let us know, because we'd love to hear about it.